When a powerful man walked into the courtroom, he thought his last name would save him. He believed his family's influence, his brother's title, and his own confidence could bend the law the way it always had. He smiled as he took his seat. He laughed under his breath when the charges were read, and when the judge looked up from the bench, he leaned back and whispered 5 words that would change everything. "I own this court." What he did not know was that this courtroom was not impressed by titles, it was not intimidated by connections, and it was about to remind him that power means nothing when the law decides to speak. The man seated at the defense table was known for 2 things. First, his last name. It carried weight in the city. It opened doors. It ended conversations before they began. Second, his certainty that consequences were for other people. He was the younger brother of a long-serving state senator in this fictional jurisdiction. While his brother built a public image of responsibility and reform, he built something else entirely, an identity rooted in entitlement. Traffic stops dismissed, business disputes handled, warnings instead of penalties. He treated rules like suggestions and authority like a performance meant for someone else. On the morning of this hearing, he arrived late, not rushed, not apologetic, late on purpose. His tailored suit was immaculate. His cufflinks caught the light as he adjusted them slowly, making sure everyone noticed. He scanned the room the way a man does when he expects recognition, not judgment. The charges were serious: reckless driving, fleeing a lawful stop, and operating a vehicle in a manner that caused bodily injury. A cyclist had been struck at an intersection, not fatally, but severely enough to change a life. Months of recovery, lost work, permanent pain, yet the defendant's expression never changed. To him, this was theater, and he had always been the lead. His attorney leaned in, whispering reassurances, the kind that end with phrases like procedural discretion and informal resolution. The defendant smirked. He had been here before. Different courtroom. Same outcome. What he did not realize was that this judge had already read the full report. Every line, every timestamp, every body camera frame. And while the courtroom waited quietly, the judge waited for something else. The moment arrogance would speak out loud. Because in this courtroom, respect was not assumed. It was earned. The clerk called the case. The defendant stood slowly, as if rising for applause instead of accountability. "State your name for the record," the judge said. He did. Confident, clear, unconcerned. The judge nodded once, eyes already back on the file. "You are charged with reckless operation of a motor vehicle, failure to obey a lawful stop, and causing bodily injury through negligent conduct. Do you understand these charges?" "Yes, Your Honor," the defendant replied, almost cheerfully. The judge paused. Not long enough to be dramatic, just long enough to be deliberate. "I have reviewed the incident report," the judge said. "I have also reviewed your driving history." That got the defendant's attention, barely. "You have been cited 9 times in the last 6 years. 4 warnings, 3 dismissals, 2 reduced penalties." The judge looked up. "Do you believe that is normal?" The defendant shrugged. "My brother always said I drive too fast." A ripple moved through the courtroom. The judge did not smile. "So, you acknowledge a pattern?" The defense attorney stepped in quickly. "Your Honor, if I may, my client's prior citations were resolved without findings of fault. We would argue they are not relevant to—" "They are relevant," the judge said calmly, holding up a hand, "when determining credibility and conduct." The judge turned back to the defendant. "Let us talk about the day of the incident." The room leaned forward. The judge described the intersection, the traffic signal, the cyclist's right of way. Then came the body cam footage. You were traveling 18 miles over the posted limit. The defendant shifted. When the officer activated his lights, you accelerated. That's not what happened, the defendant said. The judge raised an eyebrow. Would you like to explain? The defendant leaned into the microphone. I didn't see him. And even if I did, I was trying to get somewhere important. A pause. Important. The judge let the word hang. Important enough, the judge asked, to endanger another person's life? The defendant exhaled, annoyed now. Look, this is being blown out of proportion. The judge nodded slowly. That is an interesting phrase. The courtroom grew quiet. Because the person you struck spent 6 weeks unable to walk. Because of you. The defendant rolled his eyes. That was when the judge stopped writing. You find that amusing? The defendant smirked. No, I just think this is all a little dramatic. Then he laughed. Not loudly, just enough. And then he said it, low, confident, certain. I own this court. The words landed like a dropped glass. The courtroom froze. The judge did not react immediately. He simply looked at the defendant. Excuse me? The defendant leaned back. My brother knows everyone in this building. Silence. The defense attorney whispered urgently, but it was too late. The judge closed the file. And for the first time, his tone changed. Bailiff, the judge said quietly, please ensure the record reflects the defendant's statement. The defendant's smile faded. The judge leaned forward. You believe influence replaces responsibility. The defendant opened his mouth to speak. The judge raised a finger. Do not interrupt me. A beat. You believe power protects you from consequences. Another beat. You are wrong. The judge reached for the phone on the bench, and the room realized something was about to happen. The judge did not raise his voice. He did not slam the gavel. He simply made one call. Clerk, he said, connect me to the Department of Motor Licensing Oversight. The defendant sat up. Your Honor, I think there's been a misunderstanding. The judge held the phone. You have demonstrated something far more concerning than reckless driving. The line connected. This is Judge Hale, he said. I am presiding over a matter involving a defendant who has just asserted ownership over this court. The defendant's face drained of color. I am submitting an immediate referral for permanent revocation review based on abuse of privilege, intimidation of the judicial process, and demonstrated disregard for public safety. The courtroom could hear the voice on the other end. Yes, the judge said, I am aware of the severity. He looked directly at the defendant. That is the point. He hung up. The judge turned back to the bench. This court does not tolerate threats, implied or spoken. He picked up the file again. You will pay restitution to the victim for medical expenses and lost wages. The gavel tapped once. You will serve the maximum allowable suspension pending review. Another tap. And you will leave this courtroom today understanding something your last name never taught you. The judge leaned forward. Power does not own justice. The defendant stood, shaking now. You can't do this, he whispered. The judge met his eyes. I just did. The courtroom emptied slowly. The defendant did not linger. He did not speak. Outside, cameras waited, but there would be no statement, no spin. Within weeks, the review board confirmed the judge's referral. Permanent license ban, no exceptions, no special permissions, no appeals that mattered. The victim received restitution. Therapy continued. Healing followed, slowly, imperfectly, but supported. As for the defendant, His brother issued a brief statement. One sentence. No defense, no denial. Because this time, influence had nowhere to hide. And in that courtroom, something important had happened. Not just a ruling, not just a punishment, a reminder that the law does not bow, that arrogance eventually speaks too loudly, and that justice, when allowed to stand firm, still knows how to stand tall. If you believe accountability should apply to everyone, no matter their name, stay tuned, because in the end, the courtroom does not belong to power. It belongs to the truth.